Prince Harry and Meghan Markle sharing a private picture of their so-called private children to lay flowers at Princess Diana's grave for the first time. There is now international revulsion.
They thought they could get away with it. They were wrong. The ultimate royal taboo has just been shattered, leaving Prince William beyond furious and Prince Harry in a tailspin. Behind closed doors, a sacred moment at Althorp was transformed into a headline-grabbing photo op, and Prince William isn't staying quiet anymore. The palace has reached its boiling point, and the consequences for the Sussexes could be nuclear. Did Meghan go too far this time? And is this the moment the brothers cut ties forever? Here is everything you need to know. What actually happened at Althorp? Diana is buried on a private island inside the grounds of Althorp House, the Spencer family estate in Northamptonshire. For nearly 3 decades, that island has been treated as one of the few truly untouchable places connected to her memory. No cameras, no public access, no commentary, just family. Charles Spencer, Diana's younger brother, has owned Althorp since their father's death in 1992 and has controlled access to the grounds ever since her burial there in 1997. Harry and Meghan were reportedly his guests for the visit, which means whatever access they had to the island came directly through Spencer himself, not through any independent arrangement. Althorp opens parts of its grounds and gardens to the public for a limited stretch each summer, drawing thousands of visitors who come specifically to see the estate and pay respects near the lake. The island itself has never been part of that public access. It sits fenced off from the general tour route, reachable only by invitation from the family that owns it. In July of this year, during their trip to the UK, Harry and Meghan reportedly brought Archie and Lilibet to Althorp to visit that grave. Grieving grandchildren visiting a grandmother they never met is one of the more sympathetic things either of them has done in years. 2 weeks after the visit, Meghan posted a summer holiday photo dump. Buried in that carousel was an image of the family walking together, flowers in hand, along a path that many royal watchers immediately recognized as leading toward Diana's island. Meghan never confirmed it. She didn't caption it, tag it, or explain it. She just let the internet do what the internet does. Within hours, royal commentary accounts were dissecting the photo frame by frame, comparing the background trees and the lake's edge to old aerial shots of Althorp. The consensus formed fast. This was the grave. Diana's island isn't like other royal locations that get papped from a public road or leaked by a passing tourist. Access to the grounds around it is controlled by the Spencer family, and the island sits apart from the paths open to the estate's general visitors. For an image connected to that spot to end up on social media at all, someone had to be there with a camera at a moment the family chose to capture, and that photo had to survive editing and selection before making it into a public post. This wasn't presented as a standalone post marking a solemn anniversary or a specific tribute. It was one image among many in a broader lifestyle-style carousel documenting a family holiday, folded into a wider narrative about summer memories. Royal watchers read that as either careless or deliberately understated. Reaching the island typically involves crossing a small footbridge that connects it to the mainland portion of the grounds, and the whole area is landscaped specifically to stay separate from the rest of the estate that paying visitors can tour. Whoever was there was taken there deliberately. So if the visit itself wasn't the problem, what was? That's where William reportedly comes in. William's reported reaction. According to multiple insider accounts circulating since July, William did not take this well. Not the visit itself, sources say, but the decision to let images from it end up in public circulation at all. One source told the outlet Naughty But Nice that William has always been fiercely protective of his mother's memory, adding that he's upset but no longer surprised by anything Harry and Meghan do. Royal commentator Maureen Callahan framed the moment as validation of William's long-standing position, further proof, in William's eyes, that Harry and Meghan cannot be trusted with anything private. William and Kate visit Diana's grave too, They have for years, but they've never once been photographed there, and they've never posted about it. Not on an anniversary, not on a birthday, not once. One brother treats this place as sacred and invisible. The other brother's family turned it into content for a Tuesday afternoon scroll. William was 15 when Diana died. He walked behind her coffin. He spent nearly 3 decades protecting a version of her memory that belongs to him, his brother, and very few other people. Every choice he's made publicly around her legacy, from statues to documentaries about her life, has been slow, deliberate, and tightly controlled. William doesn't give interviews about Harry. He doesn't respond to tabloid claims. He doesn't publicly correct the record when stories about his brother circulate, accurate or not. In 2021, William and Harry briefly reunited to unveil a statue of Diana in the sunken garden at Kensington Palace, marking what would have been her 60th birthday. That appearance took roughly a year of quiet negotiation between the brothers' teams to arrange, and it remains the closest thing to a joint public tribute to their mother since her funeral. Both men gave brief remarks, stood for photographs together, and left separately within the hour. Since then, they have not appeared together at a single event tied to Diana's memory. Not an anniversary, not a garden reopening, nothing. That absence of any joint appearance in the years since makes the Althorp story land differently. It's not just two brothers disagreeing over one photo. It's the continuation of a silence that's now stretched across roughly 5 years, with the statue unveiling standing as the lone exception. But here's the question everyone actually wants answered. Did William say the phrase, "making headlines," or is that something else entirely? The purely for publicity claim. Reporting suggests William is concerned the Althorp visit could eventually resurface as material for something bigger, specifically tied to the 30-year anniversary of Diana's death. There's ongoing commentary about a possible documentary project, and insiders have suggested there was a clear awareness that elements of the visit could be captured for a future project. Language that has reportedly unsettled people close to the family. When a headline says William broke his silence and called the whole thing purely for publicity, what's really happening is a summary of private sentiment and secondhand commentary being packaged as a direct quote. Compelling? Absolutely. Verified? Not quite. Multiple sources describing the same general sentiment, even without an exact quote, still points to genuine friction within the family. The Netflix documentary Angle. Part of what's fueling William's reported unease is a rumor that's been circulating among royal insiders for weeks, a possible documentary tied to the 30-year anniversary of Diana's death, said to be in early development at Netflix. None of this has been confirmed by Netflix, by the Sussexes, or by the palace. It exists entirely in insider commentary and industry speculation. What's kept the rumor alive is the way the Althorp photos themselves look. Commentators have pointed to the multiple angles, the lighting, and the overall polish of the images as signs of a coordinated shoot rather than a casual phone snap on a family walk. A documentary project of that scale would need exactly this kind of personal footage, and access to a location as guarded as Diana's grave would be a significant asset for any production trying to mark the anniversary with something no other outlet could get. Speculation has attached rough figures to a potential deal, with some commentators throwing around numbers in the millions, but none of those figures have been independently confirmed by any financial or industry reporting. The same goes for claims that the documentary could now be delayed or shelved because of the backlash. That's insider chatter, not a confirmed production decision. What is confirmed is simpler: the timing of a photo carousel from one of the most restricted locations in royal history, arriving just as anniversary documentary rumors were already swirling, was always going to invite this exact kind of scrutiny. Thomas Markle contrast. Meghan's relationship with her own father has stayed a live wound for years. Thomas Markle has said publicly that he has never met either of his grandchildren and has had no meaningful contact with his daughter since before her wedding in 2018. That estrangement has played out across tabloid interviews, a documentary of his own, and repeated public appeals from Thomas Markle for some form of reconciliation, none of which have led anywhere. Commentators have drawn a direct line between that ongoing estrangement and the Althorp visit. A woman who has kept a living parent at arm's length for years chose to share images tied to a mother-in-law she never had the chance to meet. Whether that comparison is fair to make is a matter of opinion. The contrast itself, a present, living relationship left unresolved next to a public tribute to someone who died decades ago, is the kind of detail royal commentators keep returning to whenever this story resurfaces, which raises another question. If this isn't the first time privacy and Diana's memory have collided for this couple, what does the history actually look like? The history of privacy around Diana's grave. This isn't new territory for Harry. In his memoir, Spare, he wrote about a 2017 visit to the grave with Meghan, describing her kneeling and placing her palms flat against the stone, asking Diana for clarity. That moment was private. It only became public years later, by Harry's own choice, in his own words, on his own terms. The 2017 visit stayed private until Harry decided to share it himself, deliberately, in a memoir he controlled completely. This latest visit became public through a photo dump with no explanation, no context, and no confirmation. William and Kate's approach has stayed consistent the entire time. They visit, they don't document it, they don't discuss it. The grave stays exactly as private as it's always been for them, anniversary after anniversary. That consistency extends to how William has handled every public Diana milestone since becoming a father himself. When the sunken garden statue was unveiled in 2021, the palace kept the ceremony deliberately small. Family, a handful of close friends of Diana's, and a limited press pool positioned specifically to avoid turning the moment into a spectacle. William has followed that same restrained approach for the 20th and 25th anniversaries of her death, issuing no personal statements and making no solo appearances built around the date. Kensington Palace has occasionally shared official portraits on significant anniversaries, always tightly controlled, always released through official channels rather than personal social media. In Spare, Harry wrote candidly about how disconnected he felt from Diana's death as a child, describing years of struggling to accept it was real. The 2017 visit with Meghan, kneeling at the stone and asking for clarity, was framed in the book as a turning point. That same memoir also revisited the statue unveiling from Harry's side, describing the day as tense but civil, with both brothers focused on getting through the ceremony rather than repairing anything deeper between them. Harry wrote that he and William spoke briefly beforehand about keeping the day about their mother rather than about themselves, an agreement that held for the length of the ceremony and, by most accounts, ended the moment the cameras stopped rolling. So you've got two brothers, one grave, and two completely different philosophies about what grief is allowed to look like when the world is watching. Which brings us to the real tension underneath all of this. Why this story won't die quietly. For years, the narrative from Harry and Meghan has centered on protecting their children from exposure, on refusing to let royal life turn Archie and Lilibet into public property the way it did for Harry as a child. Then, a photo surfaces showing exactly those children, in a moment tied directly to Diana's memory, shared with millions of followers. If the goal has always been privacy for the kids, why does privacy keep bending in moments that also happen to generate significant public interest? There's no verified evidence of a planned shoot, no confirmed connection to a specific documentary deal, and no confirmed dollar figures attached to any of it. Those numbers exist in commentary and speculation, not in reporting that's been independently confirmed. A family known for demanding privacy shared images from one of the most private moments imaginable, and did so without explanation. Right as speculation about future projects tied to Diana's legacy was already swirling, the public reaction split almost immediately along familiar lines. Supporters of the Sussexes flooded the comments on Meghan's post with messages calling the photos touching, arguing that Archie and Lilibet deserve a connection to their grandmother's memory just as much as any other royal cousin. Critics countered within hours, pointing out that a genuinely private tribute wouldn't need a caption-free placement inside a summer lifestyle carousel alongside beach photos and restaurant shots. Both reactions were trending within the same day, which is part of why the story had the legs to survive past a single news cycle. Their entire post-royal narrative has been built around a central promise that leaving the institution would let them protect their family from the exact kind of exposure that, in Harry's telling, contributed to Diana's death. That promise has been the emotional core of nearly everything they've produced publicly, from interviews to documentaries to the memoir itself. Every time a moment framed as private ends up in public circulation, whether through a photo dump, a docuseries, or a magazine feature, it chips away at that founding promise a little more. Royal commentators have noted that privacy, for the Sussexes, has increasingly looked less like an absolute boundary and more like a resource that gets released strategically, on their own timeline and their own terms. The pattern itself, images and stories once described as too sensitive to share eventually becoming public, is difficult to dispute at this point. Other royal-adjacent figures who've faced similar tension between privacy and public life have generally picked a lane and stayed in it. You either keep something entirely private, the way William and Kate have with the grave, or you address it fully and directly, the way Harry did in Spare. The Sussexes' handling of this moment doesn't fit neatly into either category. It's not fully private, since millions saw it. It's not fully addressed, since there's been no explanation, no confirmation, no context offered at all. So where does that leave William, the palace, and the rest of the family going forward? What comes next? For now, the palace has not issued any public statement responding to the photos or the surrounding commentary. Buckingham Palace has a long history of not dignifying tabloid speculation with a response, and this situation appears to be following that same pattern. Royal reporters covering the story have noted that this silence follows the same playbook the palace used throughout the Sussexes' departure from royal duties in 2020, and again during the fallout from Spare's publication in 2023. No direct rebuttal, no acknowledgement, and no engagement with specific claims, no matter how widely they circulate. That approach has kept the palace out of prolonged public disputes with Harry and Meghan before, and there's no sign it's changing now. Trust between the brothers remains as fractured as it's been in years. Every new headline, confirmed or not, seems to reinforce whichever side people already believed. To Harry and Meghan's supporters, this is grieving parents introducing their children to a grandmother they'll never meet. To William's side, this is one more example of a private family moment becoming public content. The 30-year anniversary of Diana's death is drawing closer and will inevitably bring a fresh wave of documentaries, retrospectives, and public reflection, regardless of what either brother does. William has spent years building a reputation as the brother who protects Diana's memory quietly and consistently, without ever needing to prove it publicly. There's been no public statement, no palace briefing, and no formal comment attached to his name. That silence is unlikely to break before the anniversary itself. Royal commentators who've tracked William's pattern over the past several years expect the same approach that's defined every prior flashpoint with Harry. No interviews, no statements, no acknowledgement of the specific claims circulating about him. If anything changes, it's more likely to come through a small, controlled gesture, a quiet visit, an official portrait, something entirely on his terms, rather than any direct response to the Althorp photos or the phrase now attached to his name. William guards his mother's memory in silence. Harry keeps letting the world in. Neither approach is going away, and neither brother seems close to bending toward the other's way of doing things. If anything, this Althorp moment has only hardened both sides further. So now it's your turn. Do you think this was an innocent family moment that got picked apart by people looking for drama? Or do you think the timing and the silence say exactly what everyone suspects? Drop your take in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want the real story behind the headlines instead of the recycled version everyone else is running, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because this royal rift is nowhere near finished, and you'll want to be here when the next piece drops.